"It is time for us to set off," replied Oswald. "Will Mistress Alice oblige me with something for my men to eat, for they have fasted the whole day?" "Yes," replied Alice. "I will have it ready before the pony is in the cart. Edith, dear, come with me." Humphrey then went out to harness the pony, and when all was ready, he and Oswald set off again. When they arrived at the pitfall, they found Corbould lying between the two other Wederers, who were sitting by his side. Corbould was much recovered since his wound had been bound up, and he was raised up and put on the fodder which Humphrey had put into the cart, and they proceeded on their journey to the other side of the forest, the Wederers eating what Humphrey had brought for them as they walked along. It was a tedious and painful journey for the wounded man, who shrieked out when the cart was jolted by the wheel getting into a rut or hole. But there was no help for it, and he was very much exhausted when they arrived, which was not till past midnight. Corbould was then taken to his cottage and put on the bed, and another Wederer sent for a surgeon. Those who had been with Oswald were glad to go to bed, for it had been a fatiguing day. Humphrey remained with Oswald for 3 hours, and then again returned with Billy, who, although he had crossed the forest 3 times in the 24 hours, appeared quite fresh and ready to go back again. "I will let you know how he gets on, Humphrey, and what account he gives of his falling into the pit, but you must not expect me for a fortnight at least." Humphrey wished Oswald good-bye, and Billy was so anxious to get back to the stable that Humphrey could not keep him at a quiet pace. "Horses and all animals, indeed, know that there is no place like home. It is a pity that men who consider themselves much wiser have not the same consideration," thought Humphrey, as the pony trotted along. Humphrey thought a good deal about the danger that Edward had been subjected to, and said to himself, "I really think that I should be more comfortable as Edward was away. I am always in a fidget about him. I wish the new king, who is now in France, would raise an army and come over. It is better that Edward should be fighting in the field than remain here and risk being shot as a deer stealer or put in the prison. The farm is sufficient for us all, and when I have taken in more ground, it will be much more than sufficient, even if I do not kill the wild cattle. I am fit for the farm, but Edward is not. He is thrown away, living in this obscurity, and he feels it. He will always be in hot water some way or another, that is certain. Yet what a narrow escape he has had with that scoundrel, and yet how little he cares for it. He was intended for a soldier, that is evident, and if ever he is one, he will be in his element, and distinguish himself, if it pleases God to spare his life. I'll persuade him to stay at home for a little while to help me enclose the other piece of ground, and after that is done, I'll dig a saw pit, and see if I can coax Pablo to saw with me. I must go to Lymington and buy a saw. If I once could get the trees sawed up into planks, what a quantity of things I could make, and how I could improve the place." Thus thought Humphrey as he went along. He was all for the farm and improvements, and was always calculating when he should have another calf, or a fresh litter of pigs. His first idea was that he should make Pablo work hard. But the advice he had received from Oswald was not forgotten, and he now was thinking that he should coax Pablo into standing below in the saw pit, which was not only hard work, but disagreeable from the sawdust falling into the eyes. Humphrey's cogitations were interrupted by a "Hullo!" and turning around in the direction of the voice, he perceived Edward, and turned the cart to join him. "You've come just in time, Humphrey. I have some provision for Alice's larder. I took my gun and came on the path which I knew you would return by, and I have killed a young buck. He is good meat, and we are scarce of provisions." Humphrey helped Edward to put the venison in the cart, and they returned to the cottage, which was not more than 3 miles off. Humphrey told Edward the result of his journey, and then proposed that Edward should stop at home for a few days, and help him with the new enclosure. To this Edward cheerfully consented, and as soon as they arrived at the cottage, and Humphrey had his breakfast, they took their axes and went out to fell a cluster of small spruce fir about a mile off. End of chapter 13.